compassion. So, compassion is God's love working through people to help others who are suffering. So compassion is we see a hurting person. It could be for a variety of different reasons, but then we approach that person and we share our love, God's love, with them. This is what compassion is. And we receive that gift of compassion by having received the gift of compassion. In other words, all of us have had moments in our lives where we have been filled with a measure of heartbreak or this type of thing. And people have come to us to minister to us. And the people that are coming to us, that are ministering to us, they are sharing God's love, which is called, in this case, compassion. A few years ago, when I was pastor in Fenton, I worked with a couple different funeral homes there. In this one funeral home, one of the directors, her name was Linda, and we'd been working together for 4 or 5 years. And I was always impressed with her diligence, kind of the type of person that goes the extra mile, that type of thing, and really had a sense of passion for what she did. And so one day we were just having a cup of coffee, and I said, "Hey, Linda, how did you get into this line of work or this line of ministry?" And she said, "Well, about 12 years ago, my youngest son was killed in an automobile accident. He was 16. I have 3 kids. 16, it was 16, 18, and 20 at the time. But anyway, our youngest child was killed in an automobile accident." And she said, he was in a passenger, and the car that hit them was a drunk driver type deal. And surprise, he was the only one who lost his life in this thing. But she said, the day before, if you would ask me, the day before the accident, if you would have said, "Hey, how's life?" I would have said, "It's awesome. It's really quite good. 3 kids are all doing reasonably. We all have problems, but they're doing well. Me and my husband, we seem to be fine. We're active at church, a few different volunteer activities." And she said, really, my life was, I would call it blessed. Not perfect, but pretty darn good. But all that changed like that when my son was killed. She said it took me a long, long time to begin to really recover. And she said, I didn't even really have the will to live. I mean, it was just terrible, terrible, terrible. And she said it took about 2 years to get to the point where I no longer felt like a victim. So I always have a hole in my heart. I always carry my son with me. But it took me it wasn't me doing it. It was people helping me. It was the funeral home initially. It was my children, my husband, our friends, the church, our neighbors. But as I reflected on that period of time, God was bringing people to me to care for me and to help me. And she said, at some point, I become reasonably holy. And I said to myself, well, what should I do? How can, for me, my son's death make any sense at all? And she thought about it and she said, I'm going to go work for the funeral home. I'm going to be there for people who are mourning the loss of a loved one. And I'm just going to be there and serve them best as I can. And she said, I felt, and I feel to this day, it's a great way for me to quietly honor my son and to give back that which had been given to me. And so that's compassion in action, right? So a broken heart, people come to the person, God's love goes through people, the person receives that love, becomes aware of it, and then what happens is, we become sensitized to pain and suffering in the world, much more so. Once we've had our own experience with it and we remember it, and we are thankful. Thanksgiving is really critical. We're thankful for how God came to us through people. We're much more inclined to be dialed into this type of pain and suffering, and then live through this notion of compassion, which is a dimension of peace. So, in today's text, what we have is Jesus. He's working with people. He finds out that John the Baptist is beheaded. And it's for Jesus, it's like being kicked in the gut. Take his breath away. Him and John go back all the way to the beginning, right? Their mothers met, both babies were in the womb, this thing. Jesus paid great attention to John. He learned from John. He watched how he did ministry. They were related. It was all kinds of things. And he just lost his bearings. He needed to